I'm going to get into, I guess, a little bit of my experience with, first and foremost, with daily practices. I think it's important to mention that, or maybe to relate this to physical exercise, because when we think of fitness, we think of exercise that's physical. At least I do. And so, I think that Josh and I have a COVID gym in our basement, and it's been serving us well. We are there hit and miss. But I think as of lately, we've been there much more consistently. And like, I think that like you go on and off of it and like with physical fitness. And I think it's just like the thing I've realized is that you have to start somewhere. Like it's not like, okay, if I get the perfect weight set and if I get the best spin bike and I get all these things, like then I'll be good and then I can start working out. That's not it. Like you just start, whether it's like put on your running shoes and go for a walk, or get on a bike and go for a bike ride, or like look up a few core exercises on YouTube, and you're like set, you're good to go. And then you just slowly build from there. And like it may not come naturally or easily to you, or to me, but I find that like once you get going, it just becomes more natural and it's more of a necessity in our life. And I think the biggest thing about it is that we just need to be willing and convinced that we need it. I think that if I'm not convinced I need physical fitness, I'm not going to do it. And if I'm not convinced that I need a connection to God, I'm not going to do it. But it starts just in that willingness, in that tiny little, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to explore it. So with Life Lab, which I took, I think about 6 years ago or so, I came into the program with a faith Christian background, and I found that like churches always tell you like you should read your Bible, like that's what you should do. Like it was this thing, but I never really did. Like I did kind of. I even went and studied it, but like was I consistent in it? Like no. I was more of the person that, maybe because I'm an excitaholic, I was more like I just want this amazing revelation and I'll go for hours and then like have nothing to do with God for weeks, maybe months even, and so Life Lab encourages us to do daily practices. So it's, one of them is like good book reading, worship, or like music time, perhaps with like inspiration, or and then there's meditation and silence, listening prayer. And, these practices have actually become home to me ever since I started them. For whatever reason, I've grown so much to love them. And I've noticed they're actually like my safe place. When I feel like things are chaotic and crazy, I'll like grab my journal and like a prayer book or like something like that and just like go somewhere, because it actually does focus, and it really has been something that's worked even before I came into recovery as I know it now. And then I think the one of the things too that I struggle with is that some days I'm just not feeling it. Like, and we've talked about this before here about like God being a knowing and not a feeling. And so God is there whether I acknowledge him or not, or if I even believe in him or not. But it's just that, yeah, it's not a feeling. And so I remember when I was in college, I took this really fancy class about old dead authors that wrote extraordinary works that we keep reading today, like Dante and all of those wonderful guys, maybe a couple girls. And I remember like when I first started reading them, like it was just like English, or it was like translated from some other language, and it was just so hard to understand. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I would tell my prof, I'm like, I don't understand any of this. Like I maybe get like one sentence out of the chapter and I'm like, okay, I'll hold on to that. And I'm probably taking it out of context. But like I had such a hard time soaking into that. And what he said to me was like, just read the words, and eventually you will get it. I was like, oh, this is horrible. But it was true. Eventually it happened. And I thought of it often like I will soak up like a sponge the words. And so like even today when I am feeling like I'm not feeling this, I don't feel super spiritual right now, but here I am, I'm going to take out these things that I know are good for me. And even in the moment, if it's not like the best experience, I'm like, I'm just trusting and believing that my brain is soaking it up at the very least, and it'll come and be a part of me. And so I think even like the maybe the spiritual practice or experience the spiritual practice of these things, and we'll talk more about what these things could be. I think that is even the spiritual experience in and of itself. It's this slowly small daily discipline. And so I think the other thing I wanted to touch on too is just structure and routine and discipline. Like that's so huge, especially during a pandemic. Like who knows what day it is? Who knows like what year it is, what month it is? It's all like at least we have seasons here in Ottawa, like you can kind of tell, but like it's very it's so important to have structure, and I found that that rhythm actually like will set me up for success, and it keeps me out of the pit of despair. It keeps me out of, you know, self-pity, anxiety, these spiritual connections to God. And like even like as I'm going to open this up here, even on page 88, at the very end it says, we chaos creators, we alcoholics, we drug addicts, we food addicts, we are undisciplined. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined, and we'll get back into that. And so it just really, we are undisciplined by nature, but this discipline is really helpful actually. And so as I was going through this, even this morning, I was like, okay, I need to do this and like, you know, have some integrity here. So I sat down and did my devos and my spiritual practices for the morning. And I realized as I was reading through and I like was journaling and writing, excuse me, some stuff down, what I realized is that this spiritual discipline, these practices, they remind us of who we are and they remind us of who God is. So our identity, for me, I believe that I am a child of God. And so it reminds me of who he is and who I am. The other thing that it reminds me of too is that it reminds me of who I'm to please. When I start off the day trying to please myself or trying to please those around me, I swirl into bad places. That's just naturally it happens to me. But if I actually do take that time to sit and realize, okay, I'm not God and I want to actually please God, all of the things seem to order out from there. And so, and it also, I think that my security and like who I am, again, that will spin out if it's all run on my self-will and how I try to think things through. But again, in these daily practices, it's like sitting down and saying, okay, who is God? Okay, for me, God is loving no matter what. He's unconditionally loving. He is trustworthy. There's no fear there. He's full of grace. He forgives. And so when I set up who God is in this truth, it really, really makes a difference because I can start to look through those lenses through the day as opposed to my own natural lenses, which are skewed and twisted. And so I think it also just reminds us what is true. And like, again, my head is full of lies. My head is full of, you know, denial, disillusionment, false perceptions of alter reality. That happens. And so again, it's just pointing me back, getting me back on track. Another thing I think of is that it reminds me that I'm not the one who's going to run the show. And so like we even find that here, end of 87, we constantly remind ourselves that we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, and foolish decisions. Like, that's great. That's the goal. Like, I don't want those things. I don't want to be in danger of those things. And so this is a part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I'm convinced I need this. And so another thing I think about spiritual disciplines is that it reminds us to slow down. This has been a definite experience for me, not only with COVID taking away a lot of distractions, a lot of busyness, a lot of the stuff that that I go to in order to, you know, soothe myself or have comfort or feel good about myself, I guess. these practices actually remind us to slow down, to have some quiet. Um, and and I don't know about you, but I am not naturally that person. Man, I remember I went to I did an exchange, or not, it wasn't even an exchange. I did a semester abroad in Europe, and I went to a monastery for a while. And like they had like days, so you could even do like a week if you wanted to, but they would do like a full day here and there of like absolute silence. And I was like, oh man, that is not for me. Like, and I remember going into it and I was like, ah, and I'm like a young 20-year-old, whatever, and super immature. But like after a few hours of like balking at it, like I remember being like, oh, this is actually really nice. And I started to enjoy it. And maybe because I also live in a really loud house with three young children and myself and my husband, he's quieter than me though. Um, I really relish the quiet, and I've started to love it and get used to it. And so, I even think about even moving on to what we just read on page 88. It says we do not tire or sorry, it says we become more efficient when we do this. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. And that's the truth of my life. Like, it's true. I see it. I see it so practically when I am running around trying to control things, trying to make this person do this and this person like me, and doing this for this person over here, and putting out fires over here that are not my fires to put out. I burn out. I get exhausted. I get resentful. And then I can get into this like place. Let's say it becomes a full out emotional sobriety break. And like, I then like have a flood of emotions that maybe shouldn't even have to have been there. I'm crying, or I'm angry, and I'm furiously writing stuff down and so angry and resentful. And what could have happened? Maybe there was something better planned for me. Like maybe I didn't have to do all that stuff, and I didn't have to burn out like that. That's not even the way that we're supposed to be. I believe by design. Like, we're not meant to tire so easily. But when we're accessing God's power, which is what we talk about in step one, when I get to access the power of God and realize that I'm powerless, I can then rely on the strength of God, and it's better than mine. It's supernatural. I believe it's so much bigger than me. And so when I get to access that, I'm kind of amazed at what can happen. How am I doing for time? Let's keep going. I'm going to go into the how now. All right. So my experience of how. Number one, journaling. I love to write. If you like to write, great. If you don't like to write, maybe you should start. It's actually really great. You can start to learn stuff about yourself when you start writing. It's kind of curious of what will happen. For me, like, I write out my feelings, I write out like emotions. I like to just like sit, instead of like running away from my emotions. It allows me actually to sit in them, and that to me is a safe place. It's just like writing it out, what's true, what I'm feeling, and like sitting in it and being okay with it, knowing that nobody will read it, hopefully. The other thing, or a few other things here, would be like, I give myself timeouts. I do that to my kids when they're in trouble, but like maybe I should do it to myself before I get in trouble, is kind of what I've realized. And so, and I love that, like, it says that here, on page 87 at the end, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. And I need to do a whole lot more of that in my life, but the times that I've started to begin to do that, it's really worked, and it's been helpful, and keeps me on a sober path, and also just in connection with God. Another one, talk to your sponsor. Get a sponsor. If you don't have a sponsor, they're really helpful. There's someone that's been there, done that, ahead of the road, and yet they walk the road with you, and it's incredible. And I've seen so much of God in my sponsor. And my sponsor has pointed God out so much to me and in me, and it's been a really beautiful relationship already. Read a daily reader, like it says here at the end on 87 again, like, ask your wives or your husbands or your friends to join you in meditation. If you're a part of a religious denomination, do a morning devotion. Sorry, I'm just paraphrasing. Um, there's lots of books. You can ask a priest or a minister or a rabbi or a recovery group that you're a part of. If you're like, hey, I really want to get into doing some spiritual discipline and practices, there's lots of amazing stuff out there. You can tune in every morning at an undetermined time, and John and Vicky will read you your devotional for you. Tune in there. And it gets comical because sometimes it's a little bit scratchy and it's very fun to watch. So there's lots of resources out there. Going to a meeting, that's so huge. Just being like, I really need a meeting, whether it's being consistent with one or just knowing that, like, especially with Zoom, there's so much. You can go to so many meetings all the time around the world. So if you need a meeting, go to a meeting. It'll be a spiritual connection for you. I believe it will be. One is like meditation, which again was a hard one for me and still is a hard one for me to do. But I've realized, I remember the light went on for me at one point, and I was like, oh, meditation is just simply, even for me, 5 more minutes left. Okay, thanks, Vicky. I'm actually almost done. It's worked out well. For meditation, like just being quiet and asking God to quiet my mind, because that is often what I'm trying to escape, to find ease and comfort elsewhere. And because my mind is swirling and my mind is full of, so many things, despair, self-pity. It's full of lies or deceptions. It's full of, it can be full of fun, good stuff too, but there's just so much swirling around. And I think as humans, we are just longing for peace. We're longing for, I don't think there's many people out there that love conflict. It's a necessary part of life, but we really do long for peace. And that's really, I think, what I've really gleaned from meditation this far. It's allowed me to just slow down, be quiet, and to eventually maybe even hear from God. Ask God questions, ask for help. And then the one thing actually that I've done, that I have taped to the front of my book right here, it says, do one of each day. One recovery thing, look outside myself to someone else, move my body, and pause. And it's like, just even those things, if you can, like, not if you can, I'm not preaching at you, so sorry, I'm preaching at myself. Joanne, if only you could do those 4 things each day, those things will actually keep you connected to God, and those things will heal you and change you, Joanne. All of those things will do good and actually bring me to the place that my heart, my body, and my mind really, really want to go. And so, in conclusion, spiritual disciplines is recovery. Is what I realized. This is recovery. Like, this is it. You go through the steps. You have a sponsor. You have all these different things. But the whole point is to connect to God, because God is the only one, higher power is the only one that can take me from this hopeless state of mind to hope, is the only one that can heal everything that's going on up here and take it away, is what I've come to understand or hope to believe will happen. And at the end of the day, like, I know this is what I've learned, is that the mental obsession can go, and hopefully I don't touch my poison or you don't touch your poison. But we do have a spirit that is ever growing, which sometimes I'm like, oh man, we got a spiritual malady. Like that kind of sucks. It'd be nice to just fix that too and check that off the list and be good for the rest of my life. But that's not the point. The point, I realize, I think, is that God keeps us in that place right now because he wants to be connected to us. He's pursuing us, and we constantly need him. We're human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to blow it. And so this is what keeps us connected to God. And this is what our recovery is based on, is just that connection. And wherever you're at, if you're just discovering higher power, whatever you may call him or her or it, just keep going for it. Like I said at the beginning, like with physical exercise, just do it. Just put on a pair of shoes and walk, and you'll get there. And I think that that's the message I've got. So anyway, thanks for letting me share.